Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Running the Bases podcast. I'm your host, Michael Garaffa. We are here in episode number 7 of season 1. It has been an exciting week. The World Series began last week. That was what we were talking about on that entire podcast. It was a great one. And so far, the World Series has lived up to expectations. It is going to Game 6. It is a 3-2 lead for Houston. Even though we both had Nationals winning in 7, that still is very possible. And I do have a guest with me. He is a returning member. Nick, you are a member. You were the second guest we had on the podcast, and welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
So it's always great. Last time you were here, we were kind of just at the end of the season looking at highlights and stuff, and now, the entire postseason's gone by. We're in the World Series, and there's certainly a lot to talk about.
Oh, for sure. What an exciting World Series it's been.
And we went into this I predicted that it would be one of the best World Series ever. And so far, it's not really living up to that.
Nah.
But it's probably going to be one of the most interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you look at it, we're going to go through every game. But every single game, except for Game 1, has been a blowout. Game 3 wasn't really a blowout either, but you knew who was going to win once they took the lead.
Yeah.
And the only time that wasn't the case was in Game 1. So this could very well be a 7-game series of complete domination on both sides, which never has happened before.
Yeah.
So we're going to kick it off with Game 1, which is by far the best game of the series. It was the best way to start a World Series I've ever seen. It was just back and forth, crazy. It started off with the Astros taking a quick lead thanks to Yuli Gurriel. That was a lot of just energy right away. They were in Houston. Gurriel with a 2-run double, who was my prediction to win the MVP of the series. And then my prediction for the Nationals to win the series, Ryan Zimmerman hit a home run. So then it was 2-1. Then Juan Soto hit one onto the train tracks. First lefty to ever do that at Minute Maid Park. And then it just proceeded on back and forth. The Nationals eventually took a 5-2 lead, never turned back. The Astros fought back 5-4, but in the bottom of the 8th, George Springer making a crucial mistake. He didn't run out a fly ball to right field that ended up falling in for a double. He thought it was going to be a home run. If that ball ended up getting out, it would have tied the game. But because it didn't, Springer was on second. But if he was on third, the next guy hit a fly ball, it would have driven in that run, and we may be in a very different situation right now. So what's your take on game number 1?
I think it's just been a recipe as to what the Nationals have been facing all year. It was evident that Houston underestimated them, like every team had been off postseason. And Washington took advantage. They jumped out. Houston took the first run, and then Washington was kind of like, okay, let's do what we've been doing all year. And they scored 5 unanswered runs. And then Houston was able to fight back, mostly thanks to George Springer and my pick to win World Series MVP as of right now. But gave credit to Washington. They came into Houston where the Astros have won before, and this inexperienced Washington team took it to them in Game 1.
And a lot of things to look at here in Game 1. Winning a first game of a series is so important, but the pitching was really the interesting part. You had Garrett Cole, who pitched probably the best 5-run game I've ever seen.
For sure.
He gave up 5 runs over 7 innings. You very rarely see a guy go 7 innings with 5 runs, and he had over 110 pitches.
Pitch count.
It was incredible. He started off really poorly. It was a very difficult beginning to the game for him. Gave up 4 runs gave up 5 runs in the first 5 innings, but then innings 6 and 7 were just dominant for him. And then the bullpen was great. And for the Nationals, you had Max Scherzer, who was not Max Scherzer. He was knocked out of the game after 5 innings. He had over 100 pitches as well. He only gave up 2 runs. And I think that's the crazier part, is that the guy who gave up less runs, he got out of the game before the guy who gave up 5. So the most dominant pitcher on the team for the Nationals, he got the job done, but he didn't go as far as they needed him to, and that almost cost them the game.
Yeah, it's interesting because Garrett Cole went 7 innings, only pitching 104 pitches, and Max went 5 innings, pitching 112. That just shows you how the Astros were able to get to Scherzer early, and how they were able to get those long counts, those long 3-2 counts. Like, every Astro at this point has been giving pitchers troubles when it comes to counts.
And especially if you look at Max Scherzer's line on this day, he had 112 pitches, but only 65 were for strikes.
Mm-hmm.
That's even more of something to look at. That's 47 balls. He's almost at 50-50. That's not a recipe for success. And if you're walking guys who walk 3, that's a problem. And then you had Tanner Rainey who came out. He walked a pair, and he almost gave up the game as well. And that was just it was a critical game in this series, because if the Astros ended up taking that game, this series is over already.
Yeah.
And if the Nationals, because they won this game, it prevented them from being eliminated, and it led us to game 2, which was by far the most mind-blowing game for me, because it just made me feel like the Astros are done.
Yeah.
I mean, they came out and they killed the Astros. The Nationals won 12-3. I mean, it kicked off in the very first inning. 2 runs scored thanks to Anthony Rendon, and then Alex Bregman tied the game up. I was listening to this on the car ride home, and it was 2-2 until the 7th. And then in the last 3 innings, the Nationals put up 11 unanswered runs. They were teeing off. It was absolutely insane. I mean, just the question is for me, how does this even happen? If you're a team in the World Series, how do you give up 10 runs in 3 innings?
Right.
But I mean, looking at this, it's crazy to imagine it started off 2-2 and then 3 innings, just an offensive explosion like that.
I mean, like I said before, it's just Houston underestimated Washington. Luckily they were both tied when it came to the 7th inning, and then the 7th inning rolled around and Washington just exploded. Kurt Suzuki went yard. Howie Kendrick reached on an infield single. Runs, and then Adam Eaton went yard. Then Taylor also went yard, and then Houston put up 2 runs in the bottom frame, but it was just not enough.
Yeah,
for a big run.
And if you look at the pitching side, Justin Verlander giving up 4 runs over 6 innings pitched. Verlander's World Series struggles continuing. I mean, he pitched in games 5 of the ALCS, didn't get that game 1 start that everyone wanted him to get. And then you had Ryan Presley, who came out and gave up 3 runs as well. I mean, you can't have that out of your top reliever.
Yeah, as a huge JV fan from when he was back in Detroit, he is now the first pitcher in MLB history to have 5 starts in the World Series and start the World Series career 0-5. That to me, that's just a crazy stat. It's a Clayton Kershaw stat in the postseason. Mm-hmm. So it's just very interesting to see how JV responds in tonight's game.
Yeah, and that's even more interesting. We will look ahead, obviously, to that game, but I mean, you've got 2 former players from your favorite team. 3, that's right, Anibal Sanchez.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, going out, you're sitting here and saying, man, imagine we kept all these guys.
Imagine we kept all these guys. Imagine we won a World Series with these guys.
Yeah, seriously.
Couldn't be me. Wow.
Hey, I can't relate either. So
I mean, you won a Series of the Century.
No, we didn't. We made it.
Oh, you've been.
But we didn't win it.
Yeah.
So
I
technically, we're in the same boat. We both have lost World Series in this century.
But you guys weren't even supposed to make it that year. That's just crazy.
That's true. We were. I mean, I can go for hours about that. But yeah. I mean, we both have made it and come so close to be just embarrassed. So it's okay. But yeah, JV, a 6 ERA after 1 start's not good. But like I mentioned, with Ryan Presley giving up 3 runs, he's supposed to be your top reliever. That can't happen. So big problems for them. And then the Nationals side of it, Strasburg was amazing. Gave up 2 runs over 6 innings. The 2 were in the first. He looked terrible in the first. And then after that, he was lights out. When Fernando Rodney came into this game, it actually was a milestone in which he's the first pitcher ever, yes, you know too, that he was the first pitcher ever to pitch in the World Baseball Classic. I believe, was it the World Baseball Classic Finals or just the World Baseball Classic in general?
I think in general, but also another crazy stat is he's the first pitcher to pitch in every level of the playoffs for every league. So he's pitching the AL wildcard, NL wildcard, DS for both leagues.
Yeah. So, I mean, crazy. And also in both all-star games.
Yep.
So
what a career.
Yeah. I mean, the first, for being the first pitcher to ever do that, I don't even know if it was player. It may have been player, not even pitcher.
Probably pitcher, yeah.
It could be, because you never know. There could be a player who has done that before, because I think pitchers are a little bit more unlikely. But just to be a pitcher who's been that dominant over your career, World Baseball Classic, I can understand there are people who don't really necessarily aren't top level players who compete in that. But I mean, Fernando Rodney, a great story for him. And I mean, just it's great to see a guy like that making history. Everyone was expecting it and everybody was hoping for it. So that was really, really awesome. And then, I mean, after that, the series was shifting back to Washington. All seemed lost for the Astros.
Yeah, you'd think it would be all said and done after Game 4, but no. Here comes Houston again.
And especially because the home struggles of the Nationals weren't really existent this year. They did very well all around. They were a team who had a lot of success just in general, and the momentum was in their favor. The momentum was in their favor coming into the series, and now it's still in their favor as they get to go home and play in front of their home fans for the first time in a World Series. And the Astros kicked that series off, well, that little piece of the series off really well, getting off to a hot start. They were leading 2-1, ended up finishing that game 4-1. And it was just one of those games, once Chirinos hit the home run in the 6th, you knew it was over. I mean, it was set in stone. It was done. This game was completed, and it was that's why I'm saying it's a series of blowouts, because you knew, even though it was 4-1, once that was hit, you knew the Astros aren't getting swept. And that really was a momentum shifter in the entire series.
Yeah, I mean, Game 1's really been the only competitive game. Like you said, once Chirinos hit that home run in the 6th, that was kind of like the dagger, if you will, in that game. And you would just see that Houston now has life, and they would now carry this game for the rest of the series in Washington.
And if you also want to analyze even further, you've got Anibal Sanchez, who was originally going to be slated at Game 7, had a horrible start. 4 runs. You can't give up 4 runs in a World Series. He gave up 10 hits, contrary to his great starts in the first 2. He did pitch in the NLDS. But, I mean, contrary to that, I mean, he didn't pitch in the NLDS. I have to just correct myself there. He did not. He pitched in just the NLCS, but he pitched a great game.
He took a no-hitter in that game.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of the best. It was the most surprising, especially because he hadn't pitched in the NLDS. That's why I knew I had to correct myself there,
yeah,
because that was very important to look at and to say, man, he did great, and people had high hopes for him. And then he comes into this game, blows it for the Nats. And I think for Nats fans, they should be, to be honest, happy that Scherzer got hurt, because if he didn't, we may be looking at a very different end to this series with Sanchez possibly pitching a Game 7. So that was difficult for Nationals fans to swallow. But Greinke he had an issue with pitch count. He did very well, though. 7 hits means that he could have given up more runs, but the important part is he didn't. Only giving up 1 run in 4 2/3, couldn't get qualified for a win, but it still was one heck of an effort. Getting 95 pitches out there in the 5th inning, he battled. And in his first World Series game, a guy who has anxiety issues came out there, and he really did a great job of controlling those emotions and controlling the crowd.
Yeah, what a story this guy has been. I mean, he's talking about a guy who's bounced around teams quite a bit. He's been one of, like, usually when guys bounce around teams, it's been because they're not very good. They're just there for utility. But no, Zach Greinke's legit. He's been one of the best pitchers of our generation. I think he's been a Cy Young candidate 3 or 4 times now. Mm-hmm. And this has just been a guy that it would be nice for him to win a World Series now on Houston. This seems as more of a rental for Houston, but we'll see if he resigns with them in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it. Greinke I've witnessed it firsthand in 2015 in the NLDS. He was almost unhittable. And once you get a few runs, you have to hope that your pitching holds it down, because you know he's not going to give the game up. So Then you shift over to Game 4, which was by far the most momentum swinging game of the entire series. They were down 2-1. The Astros were. They were able to come through in this game, play an 8-1 just obliteration of the Nationals. And from killing them in that moment, you knew that they were ready to play. They were back. And the Nationals offense had now scored 2 runs in the last 2 games at home, which is not a good recipe for continuing on success. If you just take a look at the entire box score, up 4-0, the Astros had a 4-0 lead. Nationals got 1 back, and then Houston just exploded thanks to Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
Just that hit from Alex Bregman, to me, if the Astros win tonight in Game 6, I think that hit from Bregman has to be the turning point in the entire series.
Yeah, and that might win him the World Series MVP right there. I mean, I think that was his third home run this World Series, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure. Let me check.
But regardless,
2. It was his second.
Second? Okay. Yes. Well, regardless of that, he has a numerous amount of RBIs. He's responsible for a good amount of Houston's runs. This guy's just been phenomenal this whole year, and he's been the catalyst for their success. Him and Altuve and Brantley, and along with that pitching staff, credit Washington for putting up a fight, but I think it's all said and done tonight.
Yeah, and there's one really interesting thing that I saw, but just before I get to that, you have the story of Urquidy.
Yeah.
He came out and dominated.
Yeah.
He showed up in the most important game ever in his career as a bullpen pitcher, pitched 5 innings. He only gave up a whopping total of 2 hits.
Yeah.
It was the best start in the postseason. But the crazier thing that I saw was a guy posted this on Twitter the day before the game and said, "I'm from the future. I don't want to spoil everything, but the Astros win tonight. Urquidy was good, but we actually call this the Bregman game." He said this the day before, and it came true.
Yeah.
Urquidy pitched a gem, and Bregman hit a bomb.
And I think Bregman had 6 RBIs.
Yeah, and this guy actually came through and did it again the next day, where he said he made a prediction for the next game, and it was even more accurate. He came out and he said this, and I quote, "Astros prediction for Game 5. Cole dominates, Astros bats stay hot, Springer and Jordan with big contributions, coming home to Houston with a 3-2 lead." And you know what happened in Game 5? Just that. And I'm kidding you not. He said all these things right before the game. And the first runs of the game, Jordan Alvarez, opposite field 2-run homer. At the end of the game, George Springer, a put-away 2-run homer. 7-1 final for Houston in the game that put them up for their 3rd straight win, and an absolute crushing blow to the Nationals, and not a single home team has won.
Nope, it's been a road series.
It's just, it's mind-blowing to me.
If it is a road series, then this would, if history does repeat itself, then we could see the Nationals win it in 7, which would be your prediction, because Game 6 and 7 would be in Houston.
And that would have to happen if the Nationals win. It would have to end up being a complete road series.
Yeah, for sure, if it would happen. But I think it's over tonight. I think Houston just puts Washington away. The Cinderella run will be over. And yeah, we will not have baseball until the spring after tonight.
You know what? I want to say that that's the case, but I don't think Steven Strasburg's giving it up. I don't think Strasburg's losing this game.
Yeah, for sure.
I think to me, if Strasburg, I was talking about it with one of my friends this morning. We were talking about who wins. I mean, you can't predict who wins the MVP right now. No one's been absolutely dominant. There have been times in the past where you can say for a fact that you know who it is.
You don't think Springer's done enough yet?
No, I don't. I think he's the World Series king, but I think that because this series is so close, I think whoever gives whoever has the biggest game in the last game of the series is going to be it.
That's fair.
I think, let's say tonight Verlander throws his heart out, gives an 8-inning thing. I think he's going to get it.
Well,
or even if he doesn't, and let's say Jordan Alvarez, it's a big go-ahead home run, those 2 home runs, because there's really been nobody who stood out to me. And I think, for me, if the Nationals get a win tonight and Strasburg throws a gem, I think he could be my front runner for MVP, but it will be a crazy thing to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
And just going back to that guy, his official, I don't want to be stealing his tweets, his official Twitter is World Series Lawyer. He made a prediction for Game 6. Being that he was right for Games 4 and 5, I feel like it is, it's important to look at. So his official Game 6 prediction, it's going to be a tight, intense pitching matchup. JV and Strasburg will be excellent. There will be a big Will Harris moment, and there will be very late inning dramatics. But the Astros are going to win the World Series in 6. So, breaking that down, both pitchers are great.
Yeah.
But it's Will Harris who comes through in the end which is interesting because he's been great all series. He's had some big moments. And I said that whoever gets it tonight, who has that big moment, will win the World Series MVP. Will Harris could definitely get it. So I could see that happening. So if let's just say this happens. If this happens and this is true, I mean, someone's got to go to this guy and be like, what the heck's wrong with you? How are you getting all this right?
Yeah.
I haven't looked at his predictions for any other games but 4 and 5. But if this comes true today, I mean, all eyes are going to be on Will Harris for me, and probably even you now looking at this.
For
if
sure.
he comes into the game being like, what's happening with Will Harris here? But your prediction is the Astros take it tonight. So is the World Series lawyers. But from my standpoint, I think that Strasburg just can't lose today. I think he's going to go out there. He's been the best pitcher all postseason, in my opinion. I think he's even been better than Cole, just because Cole gave up those 5 runs in game 1. I feel like Strasburg's ready for it. So if that does happen and we go to a game 7, which would be awesome, that will promote a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, that would be it. I also, it's hard to root against Strasburg. And I'm going to take a different approach. I'm going to say both pitchers pitch a good 6 shutout innings, and Strasburg will be relieved for the game. I think in the 8th inning is when Houston's going to break it open for a couple runs. And then I think this game ends like a 3-0 win for Houston.
Interesting. That could very well happen. And I found out this morning that the last time a home team won a team won the World Series at home was 2013. So it's been a while. That was the Red Sox and the Cardinals. So it's been a very, very long time since we've seen that happen. And there's been a lot of home issues where the team just can't get it done at home. The Nationals couldn't get it done at home. I mean, we can go through every team that just couldn't get it done at home. But if the Nationals go on to win this series, it will be even more interesting just looking at how they did so. But if you look at Game 7, Max Scherzer came out. I don't know if you saw this because it just recently happened, but Scherzer actually threw in the outfield and he said, "I'm ready." He said to reporters while walking off the field, "I'm ready."
That is scary. If Houston doesn't get it done tonight, then we could definitely see Washington taking it in 7.
Well, if that does end up coming true, I think we're going to be seeing a Garrett Cole and Max Scherzer matchup.
Oh, yeah.
I think Cole pitched in Game 5. He will be on a whopping Monday, Tuesday rest, 2-day rest. I don't know if they would be that ballsy to do it, but they very well may be. I think, excuse me, if they do that, you've got the same matchup that we saw in Game 1, which promoted the best game of the series. Everyone loves Game 7. Game 7's the best thing in sports, or Game 5 in a division series, but Game 7s are so exciting, and I think everybody's rooting for a Game 7 in a way, because who doesn't love that?
Oh, for sure.
But it's easy to make predictions and say, yeah, the Astros are going to take it tonight. And I think there are a lot of signs pointing to it, but I think this game's going to go 7. If we do go 7, what are your predictions on that game with a Scherzer and Cole matchup?
I will give it'll be similar to Game 6, I feel like. Both pitchers are going to be great. I just feel like Scherzer with the neck will only go about 5 innings. Cole will probably take it into 7. And I just feel like at that point, I would see Juan Soto have a big moment in that game and evidently put it away for Washington. This is all if Houston does not win tonight.
Yeah.
This is Game 7. Yeah, I think Juan Soto will be the difference maker in Game 7.
Well, we will have to wait and see. It is going to be one crazy finish to this World Series. I can't wait to go home and watch. We're just a few hours away. I mean, it is going to be nuts. You made your final score prediction for tonight at 3-0. I mean, I always try and make my score predictions, but I think it's going to be even closer than that. I think we're going to see 2-1 Nationals tonight, which will be even closer. But I'm going to make a bold prediction, that the big moment for the Nationals, as the lineups are out, I'm going to say that the former Met Asdrubal Cabrera is going to come through with a big hit today, and then the Astros are going to get their lone run off of just a simple base hit. But, I mean, I predicted the score right in Game 1.
Oh, nice.
But opposite.
Oh.
I said that the Astros were going to take it 5-4. So, I mean, I was close, but just I just missed. I was wrong with the team. So you never know. Maybe I'll be right 2-1 and the Astros win it. So
Yeah.
I think Asdrubal Cabrera, he's been silently pretty productive this postseason. I think we could see that happening. So all eyes are on the World Series tonight. I think the Nationals have a lot to be worried about, but I think they should feel comfortable with Steven Strasburg on the hill. But that'll do it. Quick podcast today. We got it under 30 minutes. That is a new record. I didn't even think, I thought we were going to crack 30, but we did not. I mean, there's a lot to talk about for the World Series, but think about it. We just spoke 25 minutes about just the World Series. There's a lot to talk about, but great podcast this week. Episode 7 was a quickie. Next week, we are going to break down everything involving predictions for awards. That'll be very interesting. I'm going to have multiple angles on that from different people. I know you'll have your predictions in there as well as other people who will be sending them in via messages, and then we'll have a guest host who will be there alongside me giving his predictions as well. So I'm very excited for that, but thank you everybody for watching. Next time we have a podcast, we will be reviewing a little bit about the World Series. We'll have a new World Series champion. It's either going to be going back to Houston for the second time in 3 years, or Washington will be pulling a huge rabbit out of their hat. But thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you all next time.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.